Hello and welcome back. This is the World History Project and I'm Wood Boyles. In today's video, we're taking a look at political revolutions. We're asking, what caused them? Specifically, the liberal and political revolutions of this era. You may have heard of some of these, like the American and French revolutions, but it's important to know that liberal during this era isn't the same as being a liberal today. Calling someone a liberal back then meant that they wanted to limit the power of the government in various ways, like by largely staying out of the economy and by not infringing on people's rights. So most revolutions during this period sought to change and limit government control of their lives. And in most of them, people wanted the ability to elect their leaders and to have specific rights. So there's a lot of revolutions to choose from. I'm going to focus today on the Atlantic revolutions of North America, France, Haiti, and those in Latin America. They all happened so close together, had similar goals, and occurred around the same time. So, was something going on that caused them all to happen? Well, bad economic problems were definitely issues in each of these areas. Americans under the British felt that they were unfairly taxed. The rural poor of France struggled after several years of bad harvest. Fun fact about me, I can't say the word rural. R-U-R-A-L. It just means people out in the country. And economic problems were certainly present in Haiti. Enslaved people there had essentially no economic power at all, but they themselves were critical to the success of France's economy. But middle-class people everywhere were also facing economic problems. These were sometimes businessmen, and they were upset that nobles didn't have to pay taxes, but that they did. But perhaps the most important cause of all these revolutions was the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a major shift in thinking and was influenced by lots of people. These included philosophers in Europe, but also nuns in Mexico and merchants in West Africa. A critical belief of the Enlightenment was the idea of sovereignty. Who has the right to rule, and why do they have that right? The thinking of the time said that kings and queens had power because they had been chosen by God as his representatives on earth. This was called the divine right of kings, and if you were a monarch, this all sounded pretty good. But not everyone agreed that monarchs should have all the power. Some scholars started to believe that it was actually the people who were sovereign and had the right to rule themselves. This led to a huge rise in nationalism, where people ran their own state and had a voice in their government. They soon started demanding freedoms, or rights, also called liberties. These are basically restrictions on what the government can and can't take from an individual. It's also why we call these revolutions liberal revolutions, because they were trying to secure liberties or rights for themselves. Another reason why these changes happened around the same time was because they had strong trade networks with each other. They were able to share ideas and writings with each other very quickly. So liberal ideas in one country would soon spread to the next. And this leads us to our word of the day, ideal. It means something that is thought of as perfect, or something to hold on a pedestal. An ideal is something that is worth fighting for, which is exactly what many of the revolutionaries decided to do in defense of their freedoms. These freedoms or liberties that they were fighting for were the ideals of this period. Ideals are important because their spread was a leading cause of these political revolutions. Today I want you to go to Khan Academy and read Ingredients for Revolution in Lesson 6.1. As you read, think about which cause of these revolutions you think was the most important. Once you're finished reading, answer this in your historian's journal. If there were a revolution today, where might it be? And what might some of the causes be? We just looked briefly at several revolutions during this time period. They all had different goals, and some took different forms. A few were revolutions of thought, like the Enlightenment, rather than a violent overthrow of a monarch or a government. So what kinds of revolutions or major changes could we see today? I'm thinking about changes in Venezuela in recent years and the Arab Spring movements, which started about 10 years ago. What revolutions can you see in the near future? See you next time.